Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football. Today we're taking a look a day late at the 2022 Oklahoma Sooners spring game. Dill, we weren't even planning on doing this. We saw the highlights of the game. We saw the energy in the stadium. 75,000 people showed up to the spring game, more than a team like USC gets at their home opener. The place was buzzing. We found the film on it. We had a buddy send us the film. We're going to break it down for you. Before we start, we just want to say thank you guys for all the support you guys have shown the channel, subscribes, the likes, the comments. Dill and I love talking ball. We appreciate that you guys come, check us out, talk ball with us. Dill, let's get into the spring game. I'm going to kick it off to you. Just start about the culture change, the optimism around the program. What are your thoughts around that?
I mean, you finally have a coach who wants to play like hard-nosed football, wants to act. I think he wants to be at Oklahoma, which I don't know that Lincoln Riley always probably saw as a stepping stone. And not that that makes sense, because that's a top 8 program in the country for sure, I would say. And yeah, it just looks like he wants to be there with Venables, and that he's going to kind of re-engage the older players. Bosworth was there. That was electric. That was so
all
cool.
The stars were there. Like everybody came. All the former Oklahoma greats were there. It was just absolutely buzzing. And I think I totally agree. I mean, Brent Venables had offers to go be a head coach anywhere he wanted. Has been the best coordinator in the game for years, has been groomed by some of the greatest coaches in college football history. He was only going to take the Oklahoma job, I think. I think that was like the only job that he would have left Clemson to go coach at. When Oklahoma needed a coach, it didn't seem to take long to get him coming to Oklahoma. And he seemingly, and they said this on the broadcast, has had like a plan in place. Like he knows what he wants to do with this program. And I think looking at the transition to the SEC in a couple of years, like Lincoln Riley, he's not going to fit the SEC.
When you saw them bump up against the big dogs from the other conferences, it only was if their quarterback could play absolute magic, they had at least a chance. Shot. And they never obviously really won. I think the only game they won against a big dog was Ohio State, right? They went 1-1. So they never actually like beat any big teams from the other conferences, and it never looked close. They were never physically even on the same level, and all they relied on was having great wideouts and great quarterbacks. And if you look at what Lincoln Riley recruited, that's all he ever really had was great wideouts, great quarterbacks.
Yeah, and that not being physical, not tackling well enough is a bad recipe for the SEC when you're playing against just a really physical teams week in and week out. Brent Venables had one of the most physical defenses in college football for the last 10 years. He's going to bring that culture and that energy to Oklahoma. Now, let's start with the quarterback, because I think that's probably the most exciting thing that we saw yesterday. Dillon Gabriel obviously transferring from UCF. I didn't know Jeff Lebby actually coached him at UCF, was the guy who got him to come to Hawaii. I can't think of a better quarterback in the country to run Jeff Lebby's offense than Dillon Gabriel. In terms of like looking at the traits, the tool set that Matt Corral had at Ole Miss and what made that offense cook so much the last 2 years, Dillon Gabriel has all those options. I mean, the ball was coming out extremely quick to the playmakers on the perimeter. And Dillon Gabriel is very accurate. He has the arm talent to make any throw on the field. Now, did he miss a few throws yesterday? Sure, he did. But
it was windy.
It was windy.
Did you see all that wind?
This is I think he's been on campus for 2 months. Like he's still getting a lot of those routes, those RPO routes have a lot to do with timing. And I don't think it was as much as like poor accuracy, because we know Dillon Gabriel is one of the more accurate quarterbacks in college football, as it is just getting that timing down and getting the chemistry down between the players.
Yeah, what stood out to me was the ball's just out on time and it goes to where it needs to go. Mm-hmm. It's like the one thing I will say, he seems to be a little more patient than Matt Corral sometimes, who was very quick to check down, I thought, at Ole Miss. And if you look, he put his running backs on those checkdowns in a tough spot. If you don't give that some time to hold linebackers in the middle in zones or whatever else, they don't have a chance. I thought today he looked, and it was the spring game, so take with a grain of salt where you essentially can be more patient. But that is one thing that stood out a little bit, like, because that's part of what Jeff Lebby did at Ole Miss, and that's an important thing to do, is check it down at the right time, but be able to like look downfield a little longer.
Yeah, and I think also another thing that was a little bit surprising was just the foot on the gas pace. Even in a spring game, the dude's only been there for a couple months, and they were running about as fast as Ole Miss ran their offense last year. That's a massive part of Jeff Lebby's scheme is running with pace, not really letting the defense get set. They were cooking, and I think it's massive to have a veteran quarterback in Dillon Gabriel who one is familiar with the scheme, two has played a lot of college football, knows how to operate an offense, and he was in complete command of the offense. One other thing I'd add is extending plays. He's just as good of an athlete as Matt Corral. He looks to throw first, absolutely, but he's a very, very capable athlete, and he's very good throwing off platform on the run. I mean, the first drive, throwing on the run across his body, hits, I believe, Theo Weiss up the seam, puts a dot right on his hands. That's the type of stuff that Dillon Gabriel brings that's going to be really exciting. Now, I want to talk about the playmakers on the outside too, specifically the wide receiving group. Obviously, losing guys like Mario Williams, who I think is a ball player. Obviously, Lincoln Riley poaches him, goes to USC. Jaden Hazelwood going off to Arkansas, two contributors last year. But
Jaden Hazelwood really was probably the fourth or fifth wideout, really.
Yeah, that's true. He didn't really work out at Oklahoma, but
he was always going to go, even if Lincoln stayed, I think.
They got a really, really nice set of wide receivers, starting with Marvin Mims, who I think is pretty comfortably a top 10 wide receiver in the country, arguably top 5. I think putting together a good year he could be a first-round draft pick in 2023. Has produced for the last 2 years. I think Theo Weiss is another guy to take a look at. I mean, he's a guy that was a highly coveted top 20 recruit nationally, just injury bug last year. You saw a little bit what he could bring in the COVID year. If he can get him going, I think he can be a 750, 1,000-yard receiver as well. And then finally, Drake Stoops. I mean, they cited on the broadcast, like he was a good story, like a feel-good story. Now he's a legit target in the middle of the field, and somebody I think Dillon Gabriel is going to love on those quick.
He's a real slot receiver for sure.
Yeah, short over the middle throws. Like this dude just catches everything. He gets the job done. It's nothing pretty, but it's very effective.
Yeah. No, I think that it's going to be a good unit. I mean, that's three guys who are pretty dependable. I thought Jaleel Farouk looks like a guy who might be a bit of a more of a playmaker than just a pure wideout, but it's a talented group. It's been recruited well, obviously under Lincoln Riley. So if they just can use them, and I think again what you said, Dillon Gabriel will help keep them here, keep them interested, and probably allow them to develop and be good players.
And Jaden Gibson, the true freshman early enrollee, I also think he could be a contributor this year.
It looked like they wanted to use him.
Yeah, they did. And he's a super talented guy, another top 150 recruit. I think you might be a little young and just kind of buried in the depth chart. But again, having a deep group of wide receivers is very important to Jeff Lebby's offense, and probably something that hurt Ole Miss last year. For one, they didn't stay healthy. Dontario Drummond, Braylon Sanders, two really talented guys who didn't stay healthy, but they didn't really have a deep receiving group. Like it was a lot of just like rotating bodies who a lot of drops. You're not going to have that problem at OU. In fact, you have plus receivers who are really going to help you. Excited about this wide receiving group, and also the running backs I thought looked really good. Eric Gray's is somebody who I thought was going to the draft. To be honest, I thought he was a draft. I was evaluating him as a draft prospect in February, and then I read that he's coming back. He's a guy that I really liked out of UNC. Very, very good in space. They said he put on 10 to 12 pounds, which I think will help running between the tackles. Marcus Major, I don't think played much today or yesterday. I think he'll be a contributor. And then Javante Barnes, the true freshman.
Javante Barnes looks like he's going to really play. And he's kind of a hammer. He was running hard. He was looking very hard to tackle.
Good speed.
Which will pair well with Eric Gray, who's much more of he's not a hammer running back. I wouldn't say
he's a space.
He'll be an all-down guy, but
yeah.
He's not bringing the same physicality that Javante Barnes looked like. Granted, he will be the primary ball carrier, I think, because he's an electric player, but be a good combo with those two.
And Javante Barnes is a guy I expect to just get better. I mean, he's again an 18-year-old kid, should be going to senior prom, but that's when you get into the college program. Those they talked a lot about the strength and conditioning coach. I think his name's Jeremy.
Yeah,
Smith,
bringing him back,
which is, in my experience around the strength and conditioning realm, those coaches spend the most time with the players. They're probably the most in charge of that culture that's being created. So extremely excited that they feel like a guy is going to bring that. But for a guy like Javonte Barnes, get him into summer workouts, get him into fall camp. Like, he's going to fill out that body and become a force. I think he'll be a guy to keep an eye on. And then Tyree Walker, I've never heard of him until he just started running over people in the spring game.
Oh, yeah.
Drew Ramondre Stevenson comp. I mean, this guy doesn't look to make anybody miss. He's just going to run right through a mother's face. Try not to cuss on his body. But he's a dog. Like, I liked what I saw about him too. So they got a staple of backs as well to be excited about. And then on that offensive line, Wanya Morris, another guy that probably would have been a day 3 pick in 2022 NFL draft, coming back, definitely has a chance to be. I mean, this guy is very talented, former 5-star at Tennessee, I believe. He's a guy that if he takes the next step, he can be an all Big 12 guy, first team all Big 12 or day 2 pick in the NFL draft. Like, really, really talented guy on the offensive line as well. This offense, man, very, very excited.
And you think they're going to be tougher. I think everyone's going to be tougher because if you watch how the defense is playing, they're going to make that offense tough because they hit and they fly around and they play super aggressive. So as we transition over there, I think that's going to be like a shock to the whole conference because nobody's used to playing defense the way Venables play. Like, if you watch how Texas plays, how Oklahoma always played, how West Virginia, they're always 3 down linemen,
rush 3, drop
always 8 deep, and they're hoping they can stop you in the red zone or that you make mistakes. And that's like the polar opposite of what Venables is going to do. He's going to be in your face. He's going to blitz linebackers every time. And I think that's going to be an interesting, like, what is that going to look like? They might give up a big player here or there, but they're going to be a different animal for these Big 12 offenses to deal with.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because in the Big 12, that's what you see. Rush 3, drop 8, let you get in the red zone. When the throwing windows get tight, we're going to try to hold you to 3. That is not what Brent Venables is going to try to smother you. He's not going to let you get a single first down. And again, blitzing linebackers, and he's probably the most brilliant mind in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback. Different blitz packages, different coverage packages, confusing offenses. He's been the best defensive coordinator in the country for years, and he's going to bring that to Oklahoma. Again, it's a defense that I think a lot of people are like, oh, they're going to have a down year because they're losing just a ton of talent. I mean, Brian Asamoah linebacker, Nick Benito on the edge, Perrion Winfrey. These guys are bona fide day 2, potentially day 1 picks. But I just we've talked about this when you guys watch our NFL draft stuff. They just didn't seem to be using that personnel the most effective. I mean, Nick Benito.
They weren't a good defense last year. I mean,
with
they
all
were
the talent
giving a zillion points to everyone. So
obviously,
they gave up 35 to like Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State didn't have a great offense.
Yeah, that shootout battle. That was when you just thought like, what's going on here? This is like not. It's
all suspect.
Shouldn't have Spencer Sanders running up and down the field on you. That kind of got out of hand quick.
But, and I get that they may not have the same level of stars, but I don't know. You look at the transfer you really like, Jonah Alualu.
I want to touch on him. He's going to be a dog.
Marcus Stripling looked awesome today. He looked like a force. So,
yeah, a ton. And Isaiah Coe, he gives me big-time Perrion Winfrey vibes. Another JUCO transfer. He looks like Perrion Winfrey, kind of plays like Perrion Winfrey.
Wearing the number.
He's a guy that I'm really excited for. And again, I think it'd be foolish to make the argument that they're a more talented team on defense than they were last year because let's be honest, they're losing like 3, 4, 5 guys to the NFL draft or the transfer
they're going to play.
But they're going to play
better defense.
The scheme is going to be better. And in the future, they're going to recruit the defense side of the ball way, way better. When you look at kind of who they brought in on defense, like guys like Perrion Winfrey from JUCO, like they didn't put that much of an emphasis on getting stud defensive guys through like high school recruiting. That's what Brent Venables is going to bring.
Yeah, and like a Jaron Kanak should be a really good player. That's a big time linebacker who figures to maybe come in and play a little bit this year and will be coached correctly and probably maximize. Just like you think what the Clemson linebackers are, even some of the guys who are less talented are coached to be really big time college.
Yeah, like James Skalski, Bailey Spector, like they weren't super uber
talented. Like just guys who they just became awesome college football players, not necessarily pros. But if he can recruit talent, and Oklahoma's a place you can bring talent to, there are going to be some big time linebackers coming out of that world.
And not to beat a dead horse, but I think it has less to do. This defense will be better than it was last year. Less to do with the talent. Like the talent at OU on defense was great last year, and they underperformed. It's going to be the scheme. It's going to be how fast these players play. You look at the Clemson defenses; those guys play downhill with their hair on fire. They make big plays. They get tackles for loss. They get sacks, and they get off the field. That's what you're going to see at Oklahoma. Brent Venables, again, he's not going to play that super soft defense, rush 3, drop 8, play the red zone roulette. He's going to be getting after guys. He's going to be looking to smother offenses. And again, that just goes back to the culture around this program is clearly changing. I'm fired. I'm not even an OU fan, and I'm rooting for OU.
I'm a huge OU fan now.
Yeah,
I want them to be awesome.
Yeah.
I love Venables. I'm like, I don't even really have a reason to dislike Lincoln Riley, but he's become my least favorite coach. So.
No, I have a reason. I think he's a little snake, 100%. It's hard to like not feel like he's just being a little weasel who wants to go live in the LA. And I don't know. I'm not a Lincoln Riley guy. I did the USC spring game yesterday. Nobody.
He also was talking to USC forever. That's all.
You know it.
He keeps saying it all came out after the rivalry game. Like, that's not true.
Absolutely. Yeah. He signed the contract the morning after. Like, come on, buddy.
No.
He's a joke. Anyways, to wrap up, you got to be excited. You got to be excited, Norman. Again, 75. It looked like a home opener. I mean, that's how excited people were. I had a buddy who was at the game and just said it was bumping the whole time. People were buzzing. Man, I get a little goosebumps feeling.
Lincoln Riley's presser in the halftime was awesome. That was getting me fired up too. So
yeah, absolutely pumped for OU football in 2022. Brent Venables bringing them back, and again, it's going to be a better fit in the SEC. Like, they're going to play a brand of football that will work in the SEC. If Lincoln Riley stayed in Oklahoma and they played the SEC, I really don't think it would have worked out that well. Appreciate you guys checking us out. If you guys do like the content, we're talking a lot of OU football in the summer. So go subscribe to the channel, like the video. We appreciate all the support you guys have shown us. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace, y'all.